The air was heavy with tension on Earth, as millions of people across the globe sat in front of their screens, awaiting what was promised to be a historic broadcast. No one knew what to expect, but they all knew it would be something extraordinary. Governments, military leaders, and the most powerful beings in the universe had gathered to watch. The Galactic Council, the galaxy's most powerful and feared body, had made an announcement. The broadcast was about to begin. As the cameras clicked on, a hushed silence fell across every city on Earth. The familiar face of the Galactic Council's spokesperson appeared on the screen, and his cold, emotionless expression instantly sent a shiver down the spines of everyone watching. The man stood in front of a giant holographic map of the galaxy, an image of power that made even the bravest warriors tremble. His voice was steady, but it carried an unmistakable air of finality. "People of Earth," he began, his tone impassive, "this is a message from the Galactic Council, the governing body of the universe." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "As of this moment, the actions of your species have been deemed a threat to the balance of the galaxy. Therefore, we have decided to make an example of you. The actions of 50,000 of your citizens will serve as a demonstration of our power." The room went deathly quiet. People all around the world stared at their screens in disbelief, unable to process the horror that had just been delivered. The representative of the Galactic Council continued, his words cutting through the heavy silence. "Effective immediately, these individuals will be executed in front of the universe. This will be a demonstration that no one, no species, is above the Galactic Council's authority." The message, blunt and cold, was a warning, meant to show the galaxy's new order. On Earth, reactions were immediate. People froze, unsure of what was happening. The shock of what was being said seemed to paralyze them. Some cried out in anger, others in disbelief, while many simply stared in horror, unable to look away from the screen. A few brave souls dared to voice their disbelief. Why? Why were they executing people without cause? Then the camera cut to a grim scene. The 50,000 humans, who had been identified by the Galactic Council for their disobedience, stood in rows, their faces pale with fear. They were men, women, and children, their only crime being born on Earth. Some were scientists, some were soldiers, and others were civilians, each chosen for reasons known only to the Council. The Galactic Council's representative continued, "These individuals have been deemed criminals. Their fate has been decided by the highest authority in the galaxy. Let this serve as a warning to any who might challenge the will of the Galactic Council." As he spoke, a mechanical countdown began to flash on the screen, ticking down to 0. The camera zoomed in on the people who were about to be executed. Many were shaking, some praying quietly, while others stood tall, defiant to the end. The countdown continued, and the tension grew thicker with each passing second. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The moment the countdown reached 0, the camera cut away, and the audience heard a sound like a great distant thunderclap. The broadcast shifted to black, and a terrifying silence followed. The message from the Galactic Council had been delivered. The 50,000 humans were now dead. Just like that, lives were lost in an instant, and the galaxy watched as Earth was pushed to the edge. But in that silence, something else began to happen. The people of Earth, humans who had long been considered weak, unimportant, and powerless in the eyes of the galaxy, began to stir. The grief, the anger, and the helplessness that had overtaken them suddenly transformed into something else. Rage. Across the planet, people stood up. They shouted. They gathered. They demanded answers. In every major city, there were protests, but this was not just an act of mourning. The people were angry. They were no longer willing to sit idly by. The Galactic Council had made a terrible mistake. This execution wasn't just a crime against the 50,000. It was a crime against humanity itself. The world's governments were in chaos. There were no clear leaders in those early moments, just a mass of people desperate to take action. The global networks and leaders were in a state of shock, struggling to respond. No one had expected this. No one had believed the Galactic Council would actually go this far. However, one thing was clear. Humanity had been pushed beyond the point of no return. The Council had underestimated the resilience of Earth's people. The broadcast, meant to break them, had instead ignited a fire they could never extinguish. All around the world, a unified cry began to form. The people didn't need to wait for their leaders to act. They were ready. They were prepared to fight. And this fight would not just be for justice for the 50,000. It would be for the survival and dignity of all humankind. The first protests turned into militias. The outcry reached beyond borders and oceans. Across cities, the people rose in anger, demanding revenge for the innocents who had been murdered on live broadcast. Earth was ready to strike back. In the corridors of power, military leaders, politicians, and generals began to talk in hushed tones about a future where Earth would rise. But for the first time, Earth wasn't talking about survival. They were talking about revenge. The world had witnessed its breaking point, but now it would begin its rise. It was only a matter of time before humanity would show the universe just how wrong it was to underestimate them. The world knew it. The Galactic Council had made a grave mistake. The fires of war would soon ignite, and no one would be prepared for the wrath of humanity. The aftermath of the broadcast was unlike anything the world had ever experienced. Across every continent, millions of people gathered, trying to comprehend the horror they had just witnessed. It wasn't just the deaths of 50,000 innocents that shocked humanity. It was the chilling coldness of the Galactic Council's actions. The Council's message was clear. Earth was nothing more than an afterthought, a weak, insignificant planet in the vast expanse of space. But what the Council failed to understand was the power of a united humanity, a people who had long been underestimated. As the news spread, anger turned into action. People from every corner of the globe began to organize. Governments scrambled to respond, but their messages were mixed and unclear. The world wasn't waiting for instructions. It was already moving. Small-scale riots began in the streets, but soon, the chaos turned into something much bigger. In the absence of strong leadership, a new kind of unity began to form. The sheer magnitude of the injustice committed against Earth had awoken something primal in the hearts of its people. In the weeks that followed, Earth's cities became filled with people demanding answers, and more importantly, demanding revenge. The world's military forces, though initially unsure of how to react, found themselves caught in the tide of public fury. It wasn't just the government that had been insulted. It was every single person who called Earth home. For years, humanity had struggled with the idea of being a small, unimportant species in the eyes of the universe. But now, they understood something deeper. They were not powerless. They were not weak. They had endured wars, poverty, and oppression. Now, they had one thing left to fight for: their dignity. Leaders who had once hesitated now stood firm. Military commanders began to mobilize their forces. The first signs of retaliation were subtle, but soon they would become impossible to ignore. Earth's space fleets, long dormant, began to reawaken. But it wasn't just about preparing ships for war. It was about sending a message to the Galactic Council that Earth was no longer the quiet, humble planet they once thought it was. Earth was ready for retribution. The world's technological industries, previously focused on peaceful endeavors, quickly shifted gears. Weapons research, space defense systems, and communication networks all rapidly evolved, fueled by the anger and unity of an entire planet. What had once been an underdog, too small, too weak, too fragmented, was now transforming into a threat the galaxy had never seen. In the shadows, secret military operations began to form. Leaders and generals were quietly assembling strategies for an unprecedented counteroffensive. While the world prepared for war, the Galactic Council was still operating under the assumption that humanity would cower in fear. They had executed the 50,000, and they believed the message had been received loud and clear. The Council thought they had struck a decisive blow that would shatter any hopes of resistance. But they were wrong. By now, Earth's message was clear. The people weren't afraid of the Galactic Council. They weren't afraid of the galaxy itself. They had been pushed to the edge, and they had nothing left to lose. The humanity the Council had mocked, the myths and legends they thought were nothing more than fanciful stories, were now standing at the precipice of war, ready to prove to the universe what they were truly capable of. At the heart of this revolution was one simple truth. Earth had nothing to fear anymore. The galaxy's greatest powers had made a fatal mistake. They had made Earth an enemy. And now, humanity was prepared to show them the full extent of their wrath. The war would not be for survival. It would be for justice, for revenge, and for the undeniable right of Earth to stand as an equal among the stars. The time of Earth's silence was over. The time for action had arrived. Humanity's anger reached a boiling point as the weeks passed, and Earth's response began to take shape. What had started as a massive outcry soon turned into a carefully calculated global mobilization. Governments, once hesitant to take bold actions, quickly realized that the people would no longer accept silence. The Galactic Council had thought they could break humanity with their shocking display of cruelty, but all they had done was ignite a fire within the heart of every human. Earth was no longer the powerless, neglected planet they had once been. The world's leaders were now on the same page. Revenge was no longer an option. It was a necessity. The very fabric of Earth's unity had shifted. Former enemies and allies alike put aside their differences to confront the true enemy. Even those who had been pacifists, those who had once shied away from the idea of conflict, were now calling for action. The first step was communication. Earth had long been a fragmented world, with different nations and cultures often pulling in opposite directions. But when the threat of galactic tyranny loomed, humanity had found a common voice. For the first time in history, Earth's communication networks were being used not just for diplomatic relations, but to coordinate a unified front against their invaders. From every corner of the globe, messages flooded the airwaves, not of fear, but of determination. The new alliances quickly moved to bolster Earth's defenses. Military technologies that had once been experimental now surged forward, accelerated by the unyielding desire to strike back. Scientists, engineers, and soldiers from every nation collaborated to build weapons that would rival any in the galaxy. It wasn't just about sending a message anymore. It was about survival and dominance. What had once been a world with limited capabilities in space exploration now had the means to create fleets capable of standing toe-to-toe with the galactic powers. But this wasn't just about ships or weapons. It was about human resilience. Earth had been wronged, and they weren't just going to take it lying down. At the same time, the greatest shift in Earth's identity was happening. No longer were humans the weak species in the galactic order. No longer were they the underdogs who had been forgotten. The Galactic Council's actions had awakened something primal within every human. The world's long-standing belief that humanity was insignificant was shattered. Earth's newfound strength was rooted not just in technology, but in the unwavering spirit of its people. They had been underestimated for too long. They had been pushed too far. Now, humanity was on the brink of showing the galaxy its true potential. On the ground, the streets of Earth's major cities were filled with an energy that was impossible to ignore. The public protests, which had started out as demands for justice, transformed into organized movements. Citizens were no longer demanding answers. They were demanding retribution. The voices calling for action, for war, grew louder each day. The sheer willpower of the population was pushing governments to take bolder and more decisive steps. Military units were being formed faster than ever, and secret organizations that had been quietly preparing for years were now thrust into the spotlight, providing much-needed expertise. The Galactic Council, meanwhile, continued to believe that Earth would fall into submission. The cold, calculated broadcasts of their executions were intended to strike fear into humanity, to prove that no one, not even the humans, could defy the will of the Council. What they failed to realize was that humanity's heart was not bound by fear, it was bound by rage. The human spirit was not one to bow under pressure. The more the Council tried to break them, the stronger they became. Earth's fleets, long dormant, were now being activated in record time. Some were old, but many were new, built with the latest technology, and driven by the will of a people who now understood their own power. The first wave of military operations began with a sense of urgency and purpose. Earth wasn't simply defending its borders. It was taking the fight to the Council, showing the galaxy that humans were no longer content to stay on the sidelines. The ships launched with a determination that made it clear Earth would not be ignored any longer. Behind the scenes, political leaders worked tirelessly to assemble an intergalactic coalition of their own. They knew that, despite their newfound strength, Earth would need allies to face the Galactic Council head-on. Diplomacy and trade relationships began to form with neighboring systems, while Earth's influence in the galaxy began to grow. The message was simple. Humanity was not alone. Earth was making its stand, and other civilizations were starting to listen. As Earth's fleets gathered in the far reaches of space, the first signs of retaliation from the Galactic Council began to emerge. They had underestimated Earth's resilience, and now they would pay the price. The Council's fleet, powerful as it was, had no idea what they were about to face. Humanity had only begun to scratch the surface of their potential. The Council's dark hour was drawing closer, and when the time came, Earth's wrath would be absolute. This was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a fight for justice, for dignity, and for revenge. Humanity was finally ready to show the galaxy who they really were. The question now was simple. Would the Galactic Council be able to handle what they had unleashed? The first strike had been made, and Earth was prepared to make sure the next one would be devastating. As Earth's response to the Galactic Council's brutality continued to unfold, the first true wave of retaliation was taking shape. The once divided nations of Earth were now working as one, their combined might far stronger than anything the Galactic Council had anticipated. What had started as a moment of humiliation was now the beginning of a conflict that would shift the balance of power in the galaxy. On Earth, the preparation for war reached a fever pitch. Every government, every private sector, and every citizen who could contribute was now working toward one singular goal: ensuring the defeat of the Galactic Council. Scientists and engineers were producing state-of-the-art weaponry, defense systems, and interstellar ships that were beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The world's top military strategists were coming together to form a unified plan for war. It was a sight that had never before been witnessed on Earth, a planet united not by force, but by will. However, the most critical aspect of Earth's retaliation was its people. The Council had made one massive error in their calculation. They had underestimated the human spirit. Humanity had been mistreated for centuries, looked down upon as a small, insignificant species on the fringe of the galactic scale. But when faced with destruction, humans did what they did best. They rose up, and they did so with a fury and determination that the galaxy had never seen. It wasn't just about defending their planet. It was about reclaiming their honor. The first confrontation between Earth's fleet and the Galactic Council's forces occurred in the outer reaches of the system. The Council, confident in their superiority, sent their most powerful ships to crush what they believed was a mere rebellion. But what they found waiting for them was far different. Earth's ships, though not as large or numerous as those of the Council, were equipped with cutting-edge technology and driven by a force that no invader could have anticipated. As the two fleets collided, the galaxy watched in awe. Humanity was fighting for their survival, and for the first time, it seemed as though they were winning. The initial battle was brutal. Explosions echoed through space as Earth's ships, with their new weaponry, made quick work of several Council vessels. The Council's forces, though technologically superior in many respects, were not prepared for the tenacity and resourcefulness of the humans they had once considered inferior. Humanity fought with everything they had, refusing to be pushed around any longer. The Galactic Council quickly realized they had made a critical mistake. What had once been a quiet, insignificant planet in the corner of the galaxy was now a force to be reckoned with. As Earth's ships began to score more victories, the rest of the galaxy began to take notice. Other civilizations, previously neutral or allied with the Council, began to question their allegiance. Rumors spread that Earth was on the verge of becoming the new power in the galaxy, and with each victory, humanity's reputation grew, shifting from one of weakness to one of fearsome strength. But the Galactic Council wasn't going to take defeat lying down. They had made Earth an enemy, and now they were determined to finish the job they had started. But Earth wasn't just fighting for survival, it was fighting for something much greater: their right to exist as equals among the stars. The Council had failed to see the true power of humanity, their resilience, their ability to adapt and fight against all odds. As the battle continued, Earth's forces pushed deeper into Council territory. Each victory brought them closer to their ultimate goal: revenge. The first phase of Earth's retaliation was complete. The Galactic Council had underestimated humanity's determination, and now they were paying the price. Earth was no longer just a helpless planet. It was a force to be reckoned with. The stage was set for a showdown that would decide the future of the galaxy. Would the Galactic Council crumble under the weight of Earth's vengeance, or would humanity be forced to fight to the bitter end? One thing was certain: this was just the beginning. The war had only just started, and Earth's fury had only just begun to unfold. The Galactic Council's reign of terror would not last forever, and the humans they had once mocked were now poised to become the galaxy's new power. The question remained: who would stand with Earth, and who would fall before its might? The answer would come soon enough, as humanity's war for justice and revenge continued to grow, pushing them further into the heart of the galaxy and closer to victory. The Galactic Council had made their fatal mistake. They had underestimated Earth, and now the galaxy would bear witness to the consequences of that mistake. Humanity's wrath was unstoppable, and the Council's days were numbered. The final showdown was approaching, and Earth was ready to claim its place among the stars. The Galactic Council's response to Earth's growing defiance was swift and brutal. As the war intensified, the Council began to send their elite fleets to Earth's system, hoping to crush the human resistance once and for all. These fleets were equipped with some of the most advanced technologies the galaxy had ever seen: energy shields that could withstand nearly any weapon, ships so fast that they could outmaneuver even the most advanced Earth craft, and weapons of unimaginable power. They were the Council's last hope. But Earth was not intimidated. Instead of backing down, Earth's leaders called for one final, massive offensive. They knew this would be their last chance to strike the decisive blow before the Council could send reinforcements from across the galaxy. The stakes were higher than ever before. Earth needed to deliver a message, not just to the Council, but to every other species that dared underestimate humanity. It was no longer about survival. It was about reclaiming their place in the galaxy. They would fight until the very end, or they would die trying. The plan that Earth's commanders devised was as daring as it was dangerous. They knew that the Council's most powerful fleets were gathering near Earth's capital, preparing for a final assault to wipe out humanity's forces. Earth would strike at the heart of the Council's fleet. Their goal was simple: to destroy the flagship of the Galactic Council, and in doing so, cripple the entire command structure. If they could take down the flagship, it would throw the Council's entire war effort into disarray. But it was a suicide mission, one that could very well result in the destruction of Earth's last remaining defense. In the days leading up to the battle, Earth's fleet made preparations unlike any before. Their ships, though battered from previous skirmishes, had been upgraded with the latest human-made weaponry: laser cannons capable of cutting through the thickest shields and energy disruptors that could disable enemy craft. The humans had become experts in making the most out of limited resources, and now they were ready to show the galaxy what they were capable of. As the battle began, Earth's fleet approached the Council's flagship in a coordinated strike. The Council's ships immediately opened fire, their weapons lighting up the darkness of space. Explosions erupted in all directions as the two forces collided. Humanity's ships, though outnumbered, fought with a ferocity that sent shockwaves through the enemy fleet. Every shot fired, every maneuver made, was calculated with deadly precision. Earth's fleet wasn't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for everything they had ever lost. The Galactic Council underestimated humanity's resolve, and it showed. Despite the Council's superior firepower and numbers, Earth's ships were able to break through their lines. For every Council vessel that fell, the humans became bolder, more determined. But even as Earth's forces made their way toward the flagship, the Council's elite forces were not about to let this attack go unanswered. The battle raged on, with both sides suffering heavy losses. Then, in the midst of the chaos, Earth's fleet finally made it to the flagship. The Council's flagship was massive, far larger than any ship humanity had ever encountered before. Its surface was covered in thick layers of armor, its weapons capable of wiping out entire fleets with a single shot. But humanity had a secret weapon, one that the Council had not anticipated. In a daring maneuver, Earth's fleet deployed a series of high-powered energy disruptors, specially designed to short-circuit the flagship's internal systems. The disruptors hit their mark, sending shockwaves through the flagship's power core. For a moment, everything went still. The massive ship shuddered, its lights flickering. Then, with a deafening explosion, the flagship was torn apart. It was a victory that sent ripples through the galaxy. The Galactic Council had lost their most powerful asset, and their fleet was in disarray. But the battle was far from over. Even with their flagship destroyed, the Council's forces still outnumbered Earth's. The human fleet, exhausted from the brutal fight, had suffered heavy losses, but they held their ground. The tide of war was beginning to shift, and the galaxy was watching in awe. The destruction of the flagship was a monumental victory for humanity, but it was only the beginning. The Galactic Council would not give up without a fight, and Earth would need to stay vigilant. As the Council scrambled to regroup and send reinforcements, humanity prepared for the next phase of the war. Earth had proven its strength, but now the question was whether they could finish what they had started. As Earth's ships returned to their home planet, the message was clear. The age of human submission was over. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity took its stand, and the Galactic Council would never again underestimate the power of Earth. But there was still much to do, and the war was far from won. Humanity had won a major battle, but the war for their future was just beginning. Would they have the strength to see it through to the end? Only time would tell. The final confrontation was on the horizon, and the fate of the galaxy rested in humanity's hands. As the dust settled and the remnants of Earth's battered fleet returned to their homeworld, the true implications of the battle began to sink in. Humanity had just delivered a crippling blow to the Galactic Council, but the war was far from over. The destruction of the flagship was a symbolic victory, but it was only one piece of a much larger puzzle. The Galactic Council, despite their losses, was not a force that could easily be defeated. They still controlled vast regions of space, and their elite fleets were being reinforced as the days passed. But Earth had proven something vital to the galaxy. They had shown that they were no longer the weak, defenseless species that had once been cast aside. Earth had fought with everything they had, against insurmountable odds, and emerged victorious. Their message was clear. Humanity would not be erased, and they would never be ruled again. But the question remained, could they maintain this momentum? Could they continue to fight off the overwhelming forces of the Council, or would their own internal struggles threaten to undo everything they had fought for? Earth's leaders, while proud of the victory, knew that they had to act quickly. The Galactic Council, humiliated by the loss of their flagship and unable to ignore the message humanity had sent, would undoubtedly regroup. They would try to strike back with even greater force. But this time, humanity was prepared. The Earth's military leaders were already in the process of strengthening their defenses and improving their fleets. New alliances were being forged with other alien races that had also grown tired of the Council's tyranny. The battle for Earth had not only galvanized humanity, but it had inspired others across the galaxy to take a stand. In the coming months, Earth would face a series of challenges that would test their resolve in ways they had never imagined. But they had a new confidence now. No longer would they cower in the shadows of more powerful civilizations. Humanity had tasted victory, and they were not about to let it slip away. The Council's next move came sooner than expected. A new fleet, larger, more advanced, began to approach the solar system. Their mission was simple: to crush the rebellion that had dared to challenge their dominance. But Earth was ready. With their fleets upgraded, their forces more unified than ever, they awaited the arrival of the Council's forces. The human spirit, forged in the fires of war, was stronger than ever, and for the first time in galactic history, the question was no longer whether humanity could survive. It was whether the Galactic Council could survive humanity's wrath. The next battle would determine the fate of not just Earth, but the future of the entire galaxy. The Council's arrogance had led them to underestimate the one species they should have feared the most. Now, humanity had become a force to be reckoned with. They had won the first round, but the war was far from over. As the Council prepared for its next move, humanity prepared for theirs. This would not be a war of survival. This would be a war of conquest. And so, with the galaxy watching in anticipation, the second act of this galactic struggle began. Humanity had already taken the first step towards their rise. But the true test lay ahead. Could they outlast the Council's retaliation? And more importantly, could they build an empire from the ashes of the old galactic order? Earth had shown its strength, and now it was time to prove that humanity could stand at the center of the galaxy, not as subjects, but as its rulers. The age of the Galactic Council was over, and the age of humanity had just begun.